Michigan turned back the clock against USC this weekend. Not like 2023, but I mean like way back. I'll tell you if they can keep winning like that right here on Locked On Big Ten.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, coming up on 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, can old school Michigan win? That is the question. Plus some other things you need to pay attention to around the Big Ten now that we've seen a few games so far. And we'll have our top 10 Big Ten observations from this past weekend. We'll see if my list matches your list. So let's talk about it. 3 yards and a cloud of dust. Can Michigan win this way? They did over the weekend. Can they keep winning this way? If you caught our live YouTube podcast immediately following Michigan's crazy win over USC, you heard us say how Michigan's strategy was obviously to win that game 3 yards at a time. The old 3 yards and a cloud of dust harkens back to the days of Bo Schembechler's Michigan Wolverines and Woody Hayes' Ohio State Buckeyes teams as well. Back in the day when they dominated the Big Ten, when it was the Big Two and the Little Eight. Coaches like Bo and Woody, they thought a pass had 3 possible outcomes and 2 of them were bad. An incomplete pass or an interception, a turnover to the other team. They didn't like to throw the ball. They like to just ram it in there and run it time after time after time. But this year's Michigan team is even more old school than that. It's like they go back to the time when the forward pass was illegal and everybody was wearing leather helmets. Clearly, quarterback Alex Orji, who took over the starting job this week after Davis Ward was benched by Sherrone Moore, the Wolverines' offense is not built for the forward pass. And it's not just Orji. I mean, they don't have game-breaking wide receivers either. So the question is, can they win consistently like that? Again, they got away with it on Saturday. We're going to talk about what's wrong with the Trojans in tomorrow's podcast, by the way, because I think Lincoln Riley blew that game in Ann Arbor. But Michigan winning consistently like this, probably not moving forward, at least to a point. I'll explain myself in just a minute. In this day and age, of course, the passing game, it dominates college football. It dominates the NFL as well. But Michigan totaled 32 yards passing in that game. 32! It's unheard of. Now, unless you're Iowa, and even they can throw more than that. Think about that for a minute, Michigan fan. How does that settle it? Iowa has a more prolific passing game than Michigan. And that you wouldn't think they do. And you're like, nah, that's nonsense. Yeah. Former Michigan quarterback Cade McNamara can throw for more yards than Alex Orji. It's just the way it is. But we'll talk about that in a minute too, because that isn't great either over at Iowa. So the Wolverines, they got out to a pretty nice start running the ball because USC was conservative as well. Michigan had a 14-3 lead at the half. But the Wolverines only ran 6 plays in the third quarter. Couldn't get anything going. At one point in the fourth quarter, they had a total of 9 yards and 0 first downs in the second half. And that was late into the ball game. USC had figured out that Orji was not going to pass. So they focused their entire defense on stopping Michigan's run. And for the most part, in the second half, they did. That was until Kalel Mullings saved the day and became a superhero. With about 2 minutes to go and the Wolverines staring a loss in the face, Mullings took a 3rd and 1 and ran 63 yards to the USC 17-yard line. It was the biggest play of the game. And there it was, from there on, Mullings. And finally, on 4th and goal, inside the 2, it was score or bust. It was score or go home a loser. And he punched it into the end zone for a touchdown of the Wolverines, won 27-24. I mean, the Wolverines, who couldn't walk forward in the second half, let alone have a positive play, they just marched the ball 10 plays, 89 yards at the end of the game. It was incredible. It did harken to yesteryear, like just last year. Last year's team could do that without even thinking about it. Now, the Wolverines fans, they all celebrated like the good old days. And the Trojans fans, I think they left the big house kind of wondering what happened. I think they were stunned, to be honest with you. While USC's defense is much improved, the Wolverines are going to face better defenses that'll be keyed on stopping the run as the season goes on. When they know the possibility of a pass play is very unlikely with Orji. Orji did throw, but he only completed 7 passes all day. Can Michigan win like this moving forward? That's the question. After all, we saw him last year go into Penn State and run the ball 32 straight times. Didn't even throw a pass in the second half of that game and won it. So, yeah, it can be done. But every week, probably not. Probably not. But they could probably, if we look at their schedule coming up, they could probably beat Minnesota. Actually, the Gophers kind of like to play the same kind of football as Michigan. They like to rely on a good running game with Darius Taylor, who's fantastic. He's from Michigan, by the way. And a strong defense. That's the same thing. It's just Michigan's better at it. Michigan should win that game. After that, you look at the Washington game. Washington's a little throwback. They rely heavily on a running game. Jonah Coleman is a great running back. That'll be an interesting ball game. Wolverines, they're going to have a tough game against Illinois. Illinois is going to be a tough test for the Wolverines. Fighting Illini have beat 2 ranked teams already in Kansas and, of course, Nebraska on Friday night. And I think they've got the most underrated quarterback in the league in Luke Altmaier, who can throw the ball. So if they get any kind of lead going, it's going to be tough for Michigan. So we'll look forward to that in a few weeks. So you look at the Michigan State game. I think Michigan's style may actually benefit them against this year's Michigan State team. Because Aiden Childs, their new, very talented and athletic quarterback there at Michigan State, he's a turnover machine. He hasn't figured it out yet. He's got 2 games with 3 interceptions already each. If they're going to turn the ball over, then all Michigan needs to do is run the ball 3 yards at a time and not turn the ball over. And they should be able to beat the Spartans. But we'll see. You know, that rivalry game, you can't predict it. Ditto for the game against Northwestern. Northwestern doesn't have any offensive tack to speak of. In fact, they only scored 5 points this weekend. Literally 5 against Washington on Saturday. You know, another game like that, and the Wolverines, all they'll need to do is throw up a touchdown and they could win that game. Here's where it gets sticky. 3 of Michigan's final 4 games, they're against explosive offenses that they cannot afford to fall behind. Oregon is explosive. They got a Heisman candidate at quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. The Hoosiers, don't laugh, are explosive. They're averaging 50 points a game. They've got something figured out there. And then there's Ohio State, which is all next level, everything. Incredible. We're going to take a look at that in just a minute, too. So hang tight, Buckeyes fans. Very explosive offense. First and second string. So Michigan's going to have to he's going to have to throw the ball to keep up with those kind of teams. And right now, they just can't do it. So Wolverine fans, you can agree or disagree. Everybody else around the Big Ten, you can agree or disagree. Love to hear from you. We got, you hit me up on Twitter at X at Talk Big Ten, number 10. I love the comments back and forth on YouTube, especially when rivals go at it. Hit us up there. Those are always great. I try and answer those as well. And we'll continue to do so. I want you to be sure, if you could, I always ask, if you don't mind, if you could subscribe, just click that little button, subscribe. It's free. It's free forever. Subscribe and then share to somebody that you think might not know. We're out here every day talking Big Ten, and you have a friend or relative that is from the Big Ten. We're right here. Subscribe, share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten, wherever you get your podcast. That way you get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. We're out here at 6 a.m. Eastern, audio and video versions of this podcast. All right. I'm going to tell you some things that you need to pay attention to. We're going to talk about every single team in the Big Ten that played this weekend. I have some thoughts from every one of them I can't wait to share with you. So we got all that coming up. It is right here as we continue on Locked On Big Ten. So stay with us. FanDuel makes games even better. Games are great as they are, but FanDuel makes it even more fun. Hey, especially you NFL fans out there. You know, you could start the season with the big return here. It's still early in the season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch, maybe in the middle of a game, you know that you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play and all that on the same page where you place your bets. So you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com. I'll give you a couple tonight. Monday. Do you know we have 2 Monday night games tonight? That's right. The 0-2 Jags against the 2-0 Bills. Bills are 5.5-point favorites at home, over under 45.5. Love the Bills in this one to win and cover. Something's wrong with the Jaguars, and I like the over 45.5 on this. Also, the Commanders play the Bengals. Bengals are 0-2. They're not going 0-3. They might be tough at first, but they're going to pull away from the 1-1 Commanders in this one. Bengals 7.5. They'll cover and take the over 46.5. There. See how FanDuel just made everything more fun? Check it out. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Go to FanDuel.com. Well, thank you, everybody, for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day, especially you everydayers. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten. Don't forget our website, talkbig10.com. That's with the number 10. All of our podcasts go there, and you can get merchandise from your favorite school or your team for the rest of the football season. All right, let's talk big10.com. Ohio State, I mentioned them a moment ago. I mean, I don't know how much more impressive you can be. First string, second string, it doesn't matter. They beat Marshall 49-14. Ohio State coming off the bye week. They're pretty dialed in. A lot of big plays in this game. A lot of big plays. Emeka Egbuka, who had 117 yards, had a 68-yard scoring play. Quinshon Judkins, 173 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. One of them an 86-yarder. Travion Henderson, 2 touchdowns, had a 40-yarder in this game. Jeremiah Smith had a 53-yard catch. It's an embarrassment of riches at Ohio State. And now they turn their attention to the Big Ten schedule coming up. They are phenomenal. They are absolutely rolling. So is Indiana. Indiana 52-14 over Charlotte. I get it. It was just Charlotte. First-year head coach Curt Cignetti is now 4-0 with the Hoosiers. They are averaging over 50 points per game. 202 points in 4 games. Curtis Rourke continues to impress, their transfer quarterback. He scored on every possession that he was in the game. Their defense had 8 tackles for loss. The Hoosiers didn't even punt until the beginning of the 4th quarter of this game. And I expect the Hoosiers to crack the top 25 sooner than later. I thought they might do it this week, but there are others receiving votes, and technically they're the 27th ranked team in the country right now. Keep an eye on them. They'll take on Maryland next. Maryland's got some weapons. Maryland beat Villanova 38-20 over the weekend. Their weapon, Ty Felton. Look out for him. 14 catches, 157 yards, and a touchdown. He's been doing this all season. He's got 604 yards already and 4 touchdowns in 4 games. His quarterback, Billy Edwards Jr., who stepped in for Tilia Tungaboola, career high 328 yards, 2 touchdowns and interception in this game. But back to Felton in a minute. His 41 catches so far. 41 catches so far in 4 games. That's a Terps record. And he has 4 consecutive 100-yard games that ties the school record as well. A little shout out to the Maryland defense in that game. They had 6 tackles for loss. Penn State coming off a bye. 56-0 shutout over Kent State. Good for the defense because the defense hasn't been looking that good. But the offense, a school record, 718 yards of offense. Drew Aller threw 3 touchdown passes, ran for another, including a 59-yard heave to Amari Evans for a touchdown. It was great breakaway speed. That's what they've been lacking. You got behind the defense, stretching the defense. It's exactly what they need. So big play there. Tyler Warren caught a touchdown and threw a touchdown pass in this game. He also rushed for 16 yards. This is Andy Kotelnicki's offense. Finding a different Tyler Warren, maybe their little secret weapon. And very diversified offense there. And the defense that we've been critical of all this time so far this season, especially against their play in the secondary against Bowling Green, they held Kent State to 67 total yards and 6 first downs and forced 10 punts. I know Kent State's not on the same level as Penn State, and Kent State was already down the depth chart at quarterback. They had two more quarterbacks get injured. I know it was a tough deal, but it's something for Penn State to build on there. Rutgers had a nice lead, blew it, needed a late field goal to beat Virginia Tech, but a road win feels good. Rutgers 26-23 over Virginia Tech. And kind of a lower scoring game for Rutgers this year. Going into the game, they had scored 93 points in their 2 games. But Jay Patel kicked a 24-yard field goal with 1:56 to go. Robert Longerbeam got a game-saving interception there. And, so Rutgers, I mentioned, they blew a 16-point lead in this game in the fourth quarter. Greg Schiano's not happy about that. But it is their first road win of the season. It's their 10th straight non-conference win. So I think Rutgers is going to be fine. Also, UCLA and LSU. They travel across the country to go play at LSU, and it was hot. Oh, in the daytime, it was a brutal day. A lot of people, the fans were fainting. 34-17, LSU wins, but that game was tied at the half at 17. Brian Kelly and the team was actually getting booed coming off the field at the half because UCLA was hanging in there. Let's give UCLA some credit for playing a lot better after they got embarrassed in that 42-13 loss to Indiana at the Rose Bowl the week before. Ethan Garbers threw for 281 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have a fumble and an interception that they need to clean up. Hey, the second best game of the weekend, though, had to be Illinois and Nebraska going into the weekend on Friday night. We have repeatedly told you that Luke Altmaier is the most underrated quarterback in the Big Ten, maybe the country. He's not going to be underrated much longer after doing what he did on national TV on Friday night. So far this year, he has completed 74% of his passes. That's been fantastic. 10 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. Like I said, he's not going to be underrated much longer. Brett Bielema's team got the 2 wins against top 25 teams, Kansas and now Nebraska. Pretty good. Meanwhile, Nebraska, let's talk about the Huskers for a minute. Big expectations this year. Very talented team. Dylan Raiola. But they lost another 1-score game. This continues to beleaguer this team over multiple coaching staffs. The Huskers are 8-31 in 1-score games since 2018. You get one more score, one less turnover, one less penalty. You win those games and you're rolling, but something is holding them back. Even more startling is they now have dropped 25 straight games to top 25 teams since 2016. Now, Dylan Raiola, he was downright flashy at times on Friday night. A lot of people got to see him for the first time. 297 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. But the Huskers were an absolute disaster in overtime. And they just kept going backwards. Raiola was sacked 3 times, including the game-ending 4th down play. Also, the Huskers committed 9 penalties, including 3 personal fouls and a face mask. They've been flagged 28 times in their 4 games. They've got to clean that up. And they've been winning their games up until this time with those penalties. Got to clean it up. That's how you win those close 1-score games. Mentioned earlier, Washington, the 24-5 win over Northwestern. And that was coming off a loss in the Apple Cup to Washington State. So good job by Washington there. But let's start with the Huskies defense here. They held Northwestern to 112 total yards. They had 2 interceptions, and they had that goal line stand in the 4th quarter. So kudos to the defense. Northwestern actually had a 96-yard kickoff return from Joseph Hyman II down to the 2-yard line. A penalty got it to the 1-yard line, and they failed to score 4 straight plays. Good job of the Huskies defense, turning it over on downs. Denzel Boston, 7 catches for the Huskies for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns there. Now, I thought this game was going to be a little lower scoring, the Iowa-Minnesota game. Iowa's putting up points, but they're not getting any stats from the quarterback. It's weird. I know you take the win. Iowa won 31-14 over Minnesota, but they've got, is Caleb Johnson now the best running back? Has he surpassed Kyle Monunga as the best running back in the Big Ten? Maybe the country. Caleb Johnson rushed for a career-high 206 yards in this game and 3 touchdowns. So Iowa wins the Bronze Pig for the Floyd of Rosedale Trophy. Johnson now leads all of college football with 685 rushing yards so far. Great job. Who needs quarterback play when you can run like that? It's the 4th straight game that Iowa has topped 200 rushing yards as a team. And one player did it by himself. They did it against a Minnesota team that has thrown back-to-back shutouts defensively. The only negative here, again, Cade McNamara, who only passed for 99 yards the previous week, only passed for 62 yards on Saturday. I don't know. That's what I meant when even Iowa passes more than Michigan. Barely. Michigan State had a tough job. They went into Boston College during the annual Red Bandana game, very emotional game, and it was raining. Spartans gave up a 42-yard touchdown there with 1:28 to go. Aiden Childs had 3 interceptions. The Spartans did have what I thought was an impressive 18-play, 89-yard drive that took over 9 minutes, and they got a field goal to take a lead semi-late, 19-16, but they couldn't hang on. And then Purdue went out west to take on Oregon State. Oregon State won that game 38-21. Hudson Card threw a pick 6 on a swing pass on his first pass of the game. Uphill battle from there. One bright spot, Devin Mockabee, who we like as a running back, rushed for 168 yards and a touchdown in this game. But the Boilers' run defense needs some shoring up before they open Big Ten play. So there you go. Every team that played, I got thoughts on all of them, sharing them with you. You share with me. Let me know what you think. Hit me up on the comments there. If those of you watching on YouTube, always love all of that. Mix it all up, put a list together. And guess what? We've got our top 10 Big Ten observations from the week. See if my list matches yours. That's next right here on Locked On Big Ten. You want to go to a game? Get the tickets at GameTime. Get the GameTime app on your phone, and you'll be good to go. GameTime is the easiest, simplest way to get tickets to anything. Big Ten football, Major League Baseball, NFL, also concerts, comedy shows. GameTime. Get the GameTime app. You got, you can see the panoramic view of your seat right there, a picture of it before you buy the ticket. They've got their lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. And they got the GameTime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. They understand life happens. Maybe you buy a ticket and then, oops, you can't go. They can help you out with all that. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app. Create an account and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. The redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, let's do this. We're going to put up our top 10 Big Ten observations from the weekend. This is in no particular, it's a semi-order, if you will, the ones toward the top. It's hard to rank these. They're all great, and we'll see if my list matches your list. So we're going to put it on here one at a time. There's some things I want to talk about here. So making the list, top 10 observations of the Big Ten this weekend. A lot of these things I just mentioned when we're talking about all these games, and they're worth mentioning again. Washington's Denzel Boston had 7 catches for the Huskies for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game, the game against Northwestern over the weekend. All right, elsewhere, we put Rutgers at number 9. They had a game-winning field goal late after giving up the lead, but Robert Longerbeam had a game-sealing interception against Virginia Tech, and Rutgers wins the game. So a shout-out to the defense there. Meanwhile, Penn State offense mentioned that they had a school record 718 yards this weekend, just spraying the ball all over the place against Kent State. The Indiana offense scoring over 50 points again. They're amazing. They had 77 points a couple weeks ago, averaging over 50 points a game in all 4 games. And they're 4-0, taking on Maryland next in a Big Ten matchup. Speaking of Maryland, Indiana will have to keep an eye on Ty Felton, who had 14 catches for 157 yards and a touchdown this weekend. He got 41 catches already. Indiana's defense needs to focus on him. A lot of explosiveness in this Maryland offense. At number 5, the ground game. Iowa, Caleb Johnson rushing for a career-high 206 yards and 3 touchdowns in their game over the weekend against Minnesota. Want to give a shout-out to Illinois for their overtime win at Nebraska on the road Friday night. Going to Nebraska on the road, it was their 400th straight sellout. The crowd that was not an easy atmosphere to get a win in, and Illinois did just that in overtime. Also, want to shout out to Ohio State's offense. I told you all the things they did, all the big plays they had. Absolutely incredible. It seems like everybody had a 40 or 50 or 80-yard play. It was unbelievable how they just kept coming at Marshall this weekend. At number 2, Will Johnson defensive back for Michigan. He's their guy. We talked about all the running game and the close game and all that. There was a moment there where Michigan had no offense going to the second half, and then Will Johnson had a pick six. Without that, they'll win that game. And then, by the way, he left for x-rays later in the game. We don't know what body part or anything is right now because Sharon Moore doesn't tell anybody anything. But he did say that Will Johnson will be okay. And even said he could have come back into the ball game if they needed him. Well, I mean, after they got the game-winning touchdown, there was still a few seconds left, and USC had to run some plays. I don't know. I don't know what to believe, to be honest with you. And then at number 1, Kalel Mullings. He was an absolute hero, stepping up when everything was just dead as a doorknob for Michigan. Pulled off that big run, got him down there, and then got the game-winning touchdown for Michigan. Again, he seems to be stepping ahead of Donovan Edwards in production at running back this year. So he gets a shout out, number 1, top of our list of our top 10 Big Ten observations from the weekend. If I left something out, let me know. Hit me up with the comments there on YouTube. Would be thrilled to hear from you on that. All right. So tomorrow we are going to focus on the other half of that game on Saturday with the USC Trojans. I think Lincoln Riley blew it. I think he blew it for the Trojans with his play calling. And he's the offensive guru. I'll explain why tomorrow, plus all the latest news from around the Big Ten. We'll have Tuesday tweets as well. Many ways, speaking of many ways for you to interact with me on Twitter at TalkBig10, number 10. The comments on YouTube are fantastic. And don't forget our website, Talk Big 10. That's the number 10. You see the crawl on the bottom if you're on video. TalkBig10.com. All of our podcasts go there. This one will go there as soon as we're done. We'll group it by school. Since we were talking Michigan today, this will go under the Michigan file. We can find your favorite team, and all of our podcasts that kind of focused on your team will be right there. And no matter where you're at on the website, you can get your favorite merchandise from your favorite school, your favorite football team, right there from the Big Ten at talkbig10.com. And before you go, a couple other favors. I'm going to ask if you could subscribe. That would be great. Just click it. It's free, and we'll never ask any information from you. You're just good to go. And then you get our podcast each and every day. So subscribe, share with somebody that would like this, and follow and like this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app. You get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Go back to the website, check out another podcast from your favorite team, get caught up a little bit. I know sometimes you can't listen every day, but for those that do, thank you very much. And also invite you for a second listen to check out our friends at Locked On College Football. They have a podcast there too. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for joining us here today. I can't wait till we meet tomorrow. We're rolling. We're in the middle of the season. I can't wait to get going on tomorrow's podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you then. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten.